Next item on the agenda is the local landmark multiple property designation for the Easley Building through 510 North Franklin Street. And I believe we have a presentation.
Commissioner, if we could do a swear-in, being that we are going to have some public comment today. Anyone wishing to provide public comment, please be sworn in.
Please stand up and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you will be giving is the truth and nothing but the truth? I do.
All right, thank you. Ms. Lund.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Elaine Lund, Historic Preservation staff. The application before you this morning is for the Easley Building at 510 North Franklin Street. This item is before you today for consideration for recommendation to City Council as a local landmark. If it is designated as a local landmark, it will be a part of the North Franklin Street Downtown Multiple Properties Group. Is the presentation up on your screens?
Yes.
Okay. The North Franklin Street Downtown Multiple Properties Group currently includes 10 commercial buildings located in the vicinity of North Franklin Street and downtown Tampa. Constructed circa 1895, this building was originally known as the Easley Building, indicating a possible connection with Robert W. Easley, Tampa's 29th mayor. He was mayor from 1894 to 1895. This three-story building first appeared on the 1895 Sanborn map. That's on the left of the screen in front of you. At that time, it contained a boot and shoe store on the first floor, offices on the second floor, and lodging on the third floor. An 1897 photograph shows a sign on the building of there's a sign on the side of the building that reads "Buy Vatterland Shoes." The circa 1895 brick building originally featured a brick primary facade with arched windows on the third floor. By 1901, the shoe store had been replaced with a ticket office for the plant system. Henry B. Plant's network of railroad and steamship lines used this space. And in 1902, the plant system was acquired by the ACL, the Atlantic Coastline Railroad. The ACL used this building for its ticket office through 1907. Tampa City directories indicate that from 1908 to 1910, the Bank of Tampa occupied this building, and you can see the signs painted on the side of the building that state the Bank of Tampa was there at that time. The Grand Theater moved into this building around 1915, and the Franklin Street facade was modified for its new tenant. There was also a small addition added to the rear to fill out the lot. At that time, the primary facade was clad in glazed terracotta tiles, and the fenestration pattern was altered to approximately what its present fenestration looks like today. Neoclassical details, such as a corbel table, spandrel panels, and a dentil cornice were also added. In 1931, this building was listed as vacant, but in 1932 through 1934, there was a discount men's store in the building.
Is Perry Harvey Sr. Park Skateboard, also known as the Bro Bowl, and a nomination for the National Register of Historic Places. Mr. Fernandez.
Morning once again, Commissioners. Dennis Fernandez, Historic Preservation Manager, here on your second item of the day, which is a recommendation to the State Division of Historic Resources on a nomination that it received for listing of 900 East Scott Street, the Perry Harvey Sr. Skate Park, Skateboard Bowl, also known as the Bro Bowl, for listing on the National Register of Historic Places. And under our requirements as a certified local government, we are notified when a nomination for a listing has been received by the state, and your role is advisory, very similar to that of the local designations, to make a recommendation as to the appropriateness of the designation for the particular property being nominated. With that, I'd like to provide you with a PowerPoint overview of the property and the proximity and the request that's in front of you. Do you have the PowerPoint on your screens?
Yes.
Okay. Once again, the subject property is referred to as the Bro Bowl. I'm sure some of the individuals in the public will explain that further. It is located in Perry Harvey Senior Park, which is a city-owned public park. And the National Register nomination was submitted by Mr. Shannon Bruffett, who is here today. The National Register is the official list of historic places worthy of preservation in the United States. The bowl itself was part of the Perry Harvey Senior Park recreational amenities. It was designed by the City of Tampa Parks and Recreation Division under an employee stewardship. His name was Joel Jackson. The construction was completed in 1978, and it was dedicated in 1979, and it was constructed adjacent to the then Central Park Village development, which has since been demolished. You see an aerial map on your screen from 2013 showing the vicinity of the area. Moving down a little bit, within the red box, you see the area that identifies where the bowl is located. It's a little difficult to discern from the aerial. It's a concrete light color. It's been painted green, so it sort of blends in with the surrounding turf. On your screens, you have the 1929 Sanborn map showing the location of the area. The area, as you'll see in just a moment, was located within the Central Avenue African American Business District of that era, which had been removed during urban renewal. Prior to that, there was a number of residential structures and commercial structures that were in the vicinity. You can see the aerial from 1938, the arrow indicating the general vicinity of the bowl. Just to the east of that would have been the area known as the Scrub, which was primarily an African American residential enclave that was supported by the entertainment and business district of Central Avenue. See, in 1957, after the Scrub was removed and the Central Park Village housing development was incorporated, you still had a component of Central Avenue Business District in place. By 1965, we see the remnants of that business district, which was being systematically eliminated through demolition at that particular time. And then by 1980, we see that demolition happened really beginning in the 1960s into the early 1970s. By 1980, you see that the entire Central Avenue Business District is removed, having been replaced by Perry Harvey Senior Park, and this was just a couple years after the skateboard bowl had been incorporated. The area is rooted in its history of this historic Central Avenue area. See a lot of the historic structures that were present at that particular time in the area throughout have been removed. There are still some remaining historic elements, one of which is the St. James Church, which is being incorporated into the adjacent Encore redevelopment project. After the Scrub area was removed, the Central Park Village housing project was incorporated, which consisted mainly of construction in 1954 with numerous renovations along the way. Having been designed by Franklin O. Adams, a well-known architect in the area, was originally consisted of 57 2- and 3-story residential buildings that shared backyards and alleys. And that development was demolished in 2007. Encore, which is a master plan redevelopment of the area, stewarded by the Tampa Housing Authority with a great deal of funding through the federal government, is being introduced into the area mainly composing Central Park Village. The park sits adjacent to that development, and design has been tied in to reference the historic elements of Central Avenue, along with the African American history and leaders of the era. And it's a very minimal picture of the planned redevelopment of the park there on the left, and part of that redevelopment encompasses a redesigned skating park that would be relocated to the north of the project, and some individuals from the City of Tampa Parks Department will speak more to that. Under our role today, under the National Register of Historic Places nomination, the state has requested comments from our board as a recommending body, as a certified local government. The result of the recommendation will equate to staff preparing a report as to what the decision is today, and sending that to the state for consideration during the National Review Board review that will occur July the 25th. The nomination that was submitted by Mr. Bruffett has to meet all the normal criteria for nomination of the National Register, which have been provided to you in a handout. Those are essentially A, B, C, and D, the criteria that are typically applied to both local and national designations. A deals with properties that are associated with events that have made a significant contribution to the broad patterns of our history. B deals with events that are properties that are associated with the lives of persons significant in our past. C deals with distinctive types of architectural or engineering attributes that the property would demonstrate, as well as those type of developments that are created by the works of a master, such as someone like Frank Lloyd Wright. And D deals with the archaeological resources of the area and what information might be result from its history and prehistory. In addition to the normal 4 criteria, properties that are less than 50 years old have to demonstrate an exceptional importance. Under this particular nomination, the areas that are pointed out as the property being eligible by Mr. Bruffett are A, that is associated with events that have made a significant contribution to the broad patterns of our history. And just to read briefly from his nomination, it says the Perry Harvey Senior Park Skateboard Bowl came to be affectionately known as the Bro Bowl due to the new relationships that were developed there at the time. As time progressed, the Bro Bowl established itself as a popular skateboard destination in Tampa. People from all over the country and around the world came to skate here. The Bro Bowl has also attracted many others, such as BMX bikers and other action sports enthusiasts. And under that criterion, it is being nominated under its use as a recreational facility and for outdoor recreation. Under criterion C, which deals with its architectural or engineering value, I'll read from the nomination. The Bro Bowl is a concrete skateboard park that was built by the City of Tampa as a recreational facility for the inner city youth. It consists of a steep downhill course which leads to a curved dish at the bottom of the hill. It varies in depth from approximately 1 to 6 feet. It is a part downhill slalom, part ditch, and part swimming pool. Architecturally, the Bro Bowl embodies form and construction that are particular to the period and representative of other parks that were built and destroyed during the skateboard era from 1976 to 1982. From the downhill slope to the concrete bumps or moguls, it is irregularly transitioned walls and their rolling concrete shoulders. The bowl possesses a form that reflects a period of skateboarding that spans over 3 decades. And through your review of the nomination, as I'm sure you've read that the 70s are considered to be the golden age of skateboarding in the United States. There were a number, apparently about 200 parks that were created during that era. Many of them were short-lived. The Bro Bowl under criterion G is one of 3 surviving examples of the type of skate park commonly built in the 1970s and is the only remaining unaltered publicly owned skate park in the United States. The 3 skate parks that currently exist are the Kona Skate Park located in Jacksonville, which was constructed in 1977 and has remained in private ownership from that point to currently. The Derby Park, which is located in Santa Cruz, California, which was completed in 1976, built by the city of Santa Cruz and designed by a world-famous skate park designer, Ken Warmhout. It was renovated in 2012 and is the oldest publicly owned skate park in the world. And then, of course, the Perry Harvey Sr. Skate Park, which is known as the Bro Bowl, is the one that we're dealing with today. It is the last remaining publicly owned skate park in the United States that is unaltered. And our charge today, under the required action of this board, is to make a recommendation to the State Historic Preservation Officer that the nomination either satisfies or does not satisfy the criteria for listing on the National Register of Historic Places. And with that, some representatives from the City of Tampa are here to provide you some additional information on the location and the redevelopment. We have requested that they indicate how much time they would need for their presentation and provide equal time to Mr. Bruffett as the applicant.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Brad Suter. I'm Superintendent of Planning, Design, and Natural Resources at the City of Tampa's Parks and Recreation Department. I have 5 members of our design team, as well as a representative of the Tampa Housing Authority that will speak to you on the process that we have been going through for the past 7 years, and a very public process that has vetted this issue on the table today in many ways. We have designers, we have skateboard designers, and like I said, the developer.
Mr. Suter, before you get started, can we have an indication of how much time your presentation will be?
There's 5 of us speaking. We would like 20 minutes, please.
20 minutes. And I think it's, as Mr. Fernandez mentioned, it's appropriate for the petitioner or the applicant to get equal time. And I think, do we need to make a motion to that effect?
No, Chairman, that's within your discretion unless there's an objection from other board members.
Okay. Is everyone okay with that? Fine. Great. Mr. Center.
Okay. Back in 2006, the Tampa Housing Authority and the Bank of America unveiled their proposal to redevelop Central Park Village. That was a master planned major redevelopment of the urban core. It was significant for us because the park lies adjacent to this redevelopment, as Dennis showed earlier, and also that the Housing Authority and the Bank of America came forward that said they would contribute $3.5 million towards improvements to the park. So building that partnership, we wanted to make sure all things were accounted for. We really started the strategic planning and design process. We did the site analysis of the site. We obviously looked at what the current uses are. We recognize that the skate bowl is a significant item in the park that really lend itself to the identification of the relationships that happened there over time. But as we started our research, and in particular of the area, we discovered many historical aspects of this site. Ray Charles recorded his first album in a sound studio that's approximately in the center of the site. The Twist was actually, the dance The Twist was actually developed by youth. At a concert that Hank Ballard was performing at, he noticed the kids were dancing. He goes, what is that dance you're doing? And they said, we don't know, sir, we just call it The Twist. He went back and wrote the song and had minimal success for about 2 years. And then Dick Clark's wife saw him perform the song. He went to Dick and said, that artist that we want to showcase on your show, American Bandstand, I think we have the song that could do it. So they got Hank Ballard's song, gave it to Chubby Checker to actually combat and compete with Fats Domino at the time, and there was the story of that. It was really quite remarkable. More importantly, the birth of this community really started after the Civil War. The freed slaves established themselves in this location, and it was known as the Scrubs. For the next 100 years or so, the black community thrived there. They developed Central Avenue. They built over 100 business and entertainment and food districts, which allowed this community to thrive. And of that significance started to happen. Ella Fitzgerald, while she was performing there one time, was staying at nearby Jackson House and wrote Tisket a Tasket at the dining room table. So we started to realize that there's a lot to this, but we also realized that the skateboarding is established in that park. So we decided to hold a series of public meetings on it, and it was contentious. It was well attended, well over 150 people, and there were two sides of the house. One that were just rooting for the cultural history, and the other that was rooting for the skate park. As we were doing that and really kind of continued to look at all the important things that need to go into the design of this park and how we should move forward, we came across a bit of information from the state of Florida Department of Transportation, whereby the ultimate build-out of the interchange of I-4 and 275 is not complete at this time. They propose that they need to widen Orange Avenue to make that efficient in the future, and whereby the right-of-way line and the sound wall literally cuts right into the skate park itself and damages it. It's a direct impact to it. So as we were going through these public meetings and as we're discovering more information and picking up on the research from Janus Research when the transportation studies were done, that there were no significant historical monuments or structures in the site, we thought in order to preserve skating in this park as well as pay homage to the cultural history, we thought that it might be best to start looking towards moving the skate park to another part of the park and replicating the bowl to the best of our ability. And with that, we started really looking at how the redevelopment plan is working and how their sites and their main green space intersects the park at the midpoint of the park, approximately where the existing skate bowl is today. So when we started having these discussions and in these public meetings, we were obviously asking for comment, and we did get comments from many skateboarders. I don't know if you can read these, but these are comments that afterwards email. If the park is renovated, my choice would be to build a new concrete skate park to be redesigned for park facilities. Just a few. I think there should be a new days version of a place, maybe a flow course or a street plaza section. I have skated this park. I believe it is extremely important to provide these kinds of things in our community for our youth. Just two more. The community has greatest gains to be made if a concrete skate park were to be built. This would give youth a safe place to grow. I could understand building the park if they can skate there. And that was resounding. Yes, there's a lot of people, and you'll hear from probably people today, that want the original bowl intact. We felt it was best as we were going forward to look at this carefully, very carefully. So the mayor realized the dilemma that we were in, and she appointed a Perry Harvey Senior Park Advisory Committee made of black leaders who really could bring out the black history that's so important, that really what happened, so that we didn't miss it, so that maybe something we didn't know. Fred Hearns was the chair of that committee. He'll speak in a few minutes. But what we found was a litany of people and events that formed this community and had influence on it, to the point where there's a timeline, walk of fame of people that have done so much for this park. They developed these program elements for us to try to incorporate into the design of the park to really bring out what we consider this park as a resource for the community, the true historical significant context of the era that pays homage to this soil and which makes this soil so rich. With the completion of those 3 public meetings and the advisory committee's recommendations, a conceptual plan was put together, whereas in the north would be the more active recreation shown here in red. This blue is off-site, but it is a proposed middle school site, so the active recreation can work for both that school and the adjacent area next to it. Then go to a more flexible space in the middle where festivals can be held, music festivals, art festivals, concerts, and then to the south where some more passive recreation can take place. As you see with this kind of starts to work with the redevelopment of the Encore project, which the Encore project, obviously, if you haven't picked up on it, also based its design on the musical relevance of that historical era, naming the development Encore its first building Ella, after Ella Fitzgerald, and the Trio. As you saw a little bit before, park lies here. Currently, the skate bowl lies about right here, and the main access, green access, intersecting these 2 recreational opportunities is called Ray Charles Boulevard for Encore. Here's another perspective of it, how it comes into the park. And back just to the community for a second, this park was developed after probably Tampa's darkest period of time. There were 4 days of riots in 1967 after a white police officer shot a black youth allegedly running from a crime. That sparked chaos, riots, fires, everything. A group of men called the White Hats that came in and wearing white hats restored order. At that time, the youth approached Mayor Greco in his first term, saying that the community and the kids needed a place where they could call their own, be safe, and grow. Mayor Poe later established this park to honor that request by the youth. At the end of the day, when we were done with this planning process back in '06, like I said, there was consensus on the board. The black community was comfortable with the direction this project was going. The skateboarders realized it, and for the most part, we're very much on board. Many have requested that when the bowl does get demolished, they would like to get a piece of it. You're going to hear from one of our skateboard designers. They go that we're going a little bit step further than that in just a few minutes. The Housing Authority and the Board of or the Bank of America continued their planning and redevelopment efforts despite the downturn in the economy and the financial setbacks. And then and we went forward with our plans as well. With the plan, we hired the design firm in 2011, and currently we are in advanced design development. Which means we're like 2 months from going into construction documents. So we're very eager to move this forward in relation to what was vetted and gone through the process for over the past 7 years. It's really looking, and then I got a little bit better graphic than what Dennis had available for you that Tito from Team Payne may be able to speak on. But the intent of the skate park is to give the users the experience they had in the original bowl. It was really done in an era where skating was done a little bit differently. Skating then changed to mostly high vert. Now there's a very strong street plaza component of skateboarding. So in this new skate park, which is 3 times the size of the original bowl, it has the bowl elements. It mirrors the bowl in many, many ways, but it also provides for the other expanding sport of skateboarding as we know it today and where it will go in the future. With that said, I'd just like to close this to say that what we find is the significant historical cultural era that really signifies this ground and this park is that time from just after the Civil War. up until the late 70s when the last business was torn down. We recognize that skateboarding is important, and we think we've accommodated nicely in another portion of the park to keep that alive in this park, and also to keep it alive in the spirit that it has survived, which is so different than privately owned, is that this will be free, it'll be all concrete, and it won't be managed, and it'll be skate at your own risk. With that, I'd like to introduce Fred Hearns, who was the chair of the advisory committee, to give a little bit more light on the cultural history. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brad, and good morning to the Commission. My name is Fred Hearns. In 2006, I was an employee of the City of Tampa, Director of the Department of Community Affairs, and at that time, Mayor Pam Arroyo appointed me to serve as chair, as Brad said, of a 12-member committee put together to look at the elements in the new Perry Harvey Park, the renovations that were coming to Perry Harvey Park. We spent 12 months doing that. We met once a month, a lot of good input. The Tampa Housing Authority had representatives at the table, and you're going to be hearing from a member of their staff in just a few minutes. We thought that we pretty much worked through all of the issues that people were concerned about, and at the end of the day, at the end of those 12 months, we thought we had recommendations that were pretty sound, that were well thought out and thoroughly discussed. I think that Dennis Fernandez and Brad did an excellent job of giving you some of the history of the area and how special this land is to the community here in Tampa. As was said earlier, this is where most of the slaves settled when they were freed here in 1864. As also was said, there were over 100 businesses there by the early 1960s. One of the reasons that the young people requested of Mayor Greco in 1967 that a park be developed in the area was because, as you may know, Tampa being part of the segregated South, there was only one park available to African Americans in the 1960s, and that was Rogers Park, way on the north end of the city. So that really was behind the youth's request in 1967 for a park, and that park became Perry Harvey Park. Just so that you know also, Perry Harvey Sr., who the park is named for, in 1935 became head of the International Longshoremen Association Local 1402, which provided jobs for many, many people here in the Tampa Bay area, some of the best jobs available to African American men. His son, Perry Harvey Jr., of course, was the first African American elected to the Tampa City Council in the 20th century. So this is a very, very, very special place for a lot of people. Adjacent to the park is the historic Central Avenue mural, which is on the east side of the building there, which is the Kid Mason Recreation Center facing the park. As you also know, the Encore development, in fact, there are already people living on site and they're working on other buildings that are coming up. This park is going to be within walking distance of them. You've heard about the history of that area. One other thing I'd like to mention, 1964, a major motion picture was shot on Central Avenue. The title of it was Black Like Me, and was based on a true story. So the history of this area goes far back. We think that the committee did its due diligence over those 12 months. We also are excited, as Brad mentioned, that the plans for the new skate bowl would put it north of Scott Street, adjacent to, one day, a middle school that the Hillsborough County School District is going to be building, which will be right next to the school and bring a lot of benefits to the kids. With that, I'd like to introduce from the Tampa Housing Authority, Debbie Joyce. She is Assistant Director of Real Estate Development, and she'll speak about the Housing Authority's involvement with this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hearn.
Good morning, members of the board. I'm here to represent Tampa Housing Authority. We are the leaders of the master planning development for the Encore project along with Bank of America. We are in full support of the Perry Harvey Senior Park renovation. We're very excited about it. In fact, we have some funding associated with our Choice Neighborhood Award that we received December 2012 to help and assist the City of Tampa with the renovation of the park. As part of the planning process that Fred Hearns had mentioned in 2006, our resident council president, Mary Williams, was involved in the planning process, and the vice president of former Central Park Village, Ruth Dewberry, was involved in the planning process, as well as some of the staff of the Tampa Housing Authority. We believe that the new skate park will be located by the middle school in the active section of the park. We're very supportive of that plan and would like to see it move forward as we continue to develop the Encore project. As Mr. Hearns had mentioned, we have the Ella that has been constructed. It's occupied 160 units, but currently under construction we have the Trio, which will be a family housing development that will bring in a number of children and families to the park. And so to continue the renovation of the park will provide recreation very near their residential units. So we are in support of the City of Tampa's plan. Are there any questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. We do have a handout.
I meant to say that after our presentation, we do have a handout to give to you during your discussion purposes. I ran a little long. I'd like to request just a small extension so 2 more members of our team can speak briefly. Tito from Team Payne. I'm sorry, Tito. I don't even know Tito's last name. He's always just Tito.
Like my dog.
Parada.
I think, is everybody on the board okay with that? Okay.
Hello. Hi, I'm Tito from Team Payne Skate Parks. Tito Parada is my last name, by the way, for those who are wondering. I am the lead skate park consultant for that's been hired by the architectural firm Kimley Horn. That's been selected to do the general design of the skate park. I've actually been working behind the scenes with the city back when 2007 we were approached and we were consulted. We acted as a consultant to give them some, information, professional skate park information in regards to how to mitigate the skate park. I mean, the history of this park goes way back, and it's so rich. And as a skateboarder, I want to give you a background. I've been behind the design of over 20 municipal skate parks throughout the world. From Belgium to Florida, Colorado, you name it. And we are very proud to be one of the few companies that are still in Florida. We're an Orlando-based company, and I myself moved from Puerto Rico in 1984. In 1985, I started skateboarding. In 1986, I actually traveled and got to skate, the Bro Bowl. I myself feel attached to the project. And I have a lot of sentiments to a lot of the skate community in all levels. So I don't just come here as a skate park consultant. I come also here as someone that's been there, and I actually enjoyed the park. Lucky enough, I mean, my experiences came full circle to now this is what I do for a living. One of the things that as a consultant we were blown away is the history of this park. I mean, it's what we call a snake run. This structure, you guys mentioned the Derby Park. That's one of the many parks we've explored as far as legacy and all that good stuff. But even Derby recently got, we call it poured on top. We at Kona rebuilt their pool by pouring on top. So we feel like we're very specialized in regards to renovating and consulting with dealing with parks of this nature. We're lucky enough to actually, some of our staff worked on the Derby Park renovation in California recently, and then our staff did the main pro pool bowl, that big 11-foot deep bowl in Kona and the Jacksonville skate parks. So, we're here to try to save it. We did everything in regards to exploring whether we can pour on top, whether we can move it. Brittle concrete logistics just did not work out, and it wasn't feasible. However, one thing is a fact: when we kind of get down to business and look at the structure itself and where skateboarding's at, the facility needs updating. It doesn't have smooth transitions. It has been worked on in the recent years in regards to there was a deck added, there was some green space that got filled up. Sadly, there's expansion joints that are big cracks that are not your typical modern day, doesn't meet the modern day skate park standards. So we as a company, did our best to try to explore, how can we preserve it. But looking at the big picture of the entire park, it is just hands down that the rich cultural history of the park needs to take priority, and at the same time offer something that's consistent with Joel Jackson's vision, that was to create something for the youth. So, our conclusion ended up being that, look, providing a skate park that actually meets today's criteria to really reach out to the entire skate community, one that, that's huge compared to just, the small skate community that just it's attached to the bowl. We explored what the attachments are, the experience. It's the biggest, hands down thing that I think everyone could agree here. Florida has a terrible way of running skate parks. Usually they put a pad nanny in there, they got to pay to play. The skate park, the Perry Harvey skate park, has always been there, free, unfenced, unsupervised. And so that was the main criteria that we were first tasked to preserve. And we feel really accomplished that everyone in the city is backing this. So as a skateboarder and also the skate consultant, we are really, we're really proud of the city to really look out after skateboarding's main interests. So, the new planned park commemorates the skate park, but it also, we made an art effort to commemorate the old park by actually moving the moguls, placing them right next to the skate park as a permanent art concrete installation that sticks out of the ground, so that as people are enjoying the new park, they can actually have their kids, play around these moguls, and them themselves just ask, what is this? And getting this conversation piece, and I feel also reaching out to the larger, creating a big draw of skate community, we can really pay better homage to the skate park by, looking out after Joel Jackson's vision of moving towards the future skaters and reaching out way more people, and really looking at the entire main purpose of this park, which is to show history, both the early history all the way to the end when the skate park got developed. So with that, I just want to say thank you for your time, and I want to thank all the advocates, no matter what side, for just getting together and showing their passion. Thank you.
Prepared all these notes for you. So I wanted to say thanks and giving us the time and the opportunity to come, commissioners. I think they almost covered it all. I'll probably say a lot of the same things, but in a different way, and I have a couple important things to do.
Can you state your name for the record?
My name is Brian Schaefer. I am a resident of Ybor City since 2007. I grew up in Florida, and I've been skating the Bro Bowl since 1984, since I was 13. I also own and operate a successful, progressive urban element of Tampa for 20 years. It's called the Skate Park of Tampa. And we're proud to say that we've brought great things to this community and brought great people to explore other facets of Tampa, meaning the Bro Bowl, and they look forward to seeing something new and improved so they can really utilize it. And being associated with the changes will only bring great world-renowned skateboarders to use the facility as well. Not only do I own the Skate Park of Tampa, I've also owned the Bricks in Ybor City for 3 years, so we believe in the community. And as a private business, there's a lot of concerns of wow, you're opening up a skate park, or you're supporting something that's 5 miles away. There is an opportunity that this could be better and free, but it's the way skateboarding should be. So if anybody should have great concerns about relocating and making something better, not only to add elements of skateboarding that cater to people that are now 3 years old and 60 versus one style of skateboarding that the Bro Bowl provides right now. And I want to touch, back to the private business. I should be more concerned, and I am full support with a lot of people within the Skate Park of Tampa and the community of Florida to make changes, and it will threaten our business in one regards, but competition is good, but it will allow and flourish more skateboarders to have the opportunity to see what skateboarding is about and be exposed to a free, safe, more improved, tons more caliber of all levels to utilize. So, to continue on that note, if anybody should be concerned, it's me. And I'm so compassionate about the bowl because I learned to skate there. And everybody did. It was much rougher. It was, cracked as it is now. This skate park will provide a safer, better, more to utilize, better investment for the community, and more progressive opportunity for the community, not only with skateboarding, but to help our urban growth within the city of Tampa and throughout Florida. As I want to express my compassion of everybody that wants to preserve it. It's been approximately 40 years or 30 years, approximately, a little bit more. A lot of history that is there, but as Tito touched on, moving parts of it, and I too want a piece of that because my heart's in it, but my heart's in it to improve it and make it better so it's utilized for the community, and the whole park is a great wave, and not putting a skate park in there or leaving as it is, it will never be optimized the way it should be. As I said, I can speak for a lot of skateboarding, and my compassion is with everybody that does want to save it for the most part. The historic elements of the park, not only is it going to be free, and not only is it going to be padless and no gate, it's going to be utilized intensively, and probably the best investment of that whole park, hence adding a lot of shade around that park just to assist with that. So preserving the historic parts of it are still going to be there, and no one really touched base on the historic pieces that were there in the past. When there was a playground there was embankments, these brick banks that actually allowed a different caliber of skating. And back in the day, sometimes, and 50% of the time, you'd see people skating the Bro Bowl because it was a one style, one caliber skateboarding. There'd be this, it was an accident, by the way, and a good accident, I think, the gents for building a park. But there was banks there that was to today's modern skateboarding, which the facility will provide as well. So with that being said, I know we're running out of time. I want to thank you for extending the time. But once again, we support moving forward and not putting a stamp on preserving this historically, because the historic elements will be still there to educate the past, as you have to respect it. And I am compassionate for both parties, and I hope we can move forward without preserving it. And I thank you very much for the time.
Thank you, Mr. Schaefer. For the record, that entire presentation was 29 minutes, so let's go ahead and afford 30 minutes to the petitioner, the applicant, Mr. Bruffett. Mr. Fernandez.
Chairman, I'm going to be passing out the exhibits that the city parks had provided for me. In addition, I'll be passing you a petition that was handed to me by Mr. Bruffett. I'll just read that, and he could speak to the amount of names on here. It's not numbered. But the petition says, "We ask you to please preserve the Perry Harvey Senior Park Skateboard Bro Bowl. It is an integral part of the city's rich, diverse history. It is the only surviving concrete public skateboard park from the 1970s in the U.S. It has been considered eligible for consideration on the National Register of Historic Places by both state and federal officials. Please do not allow this important part of our city's cultural history to be erased." And it's got a number of pages and names I'll provide to you.
Thank you. Mr. Bruffett, ready when you are.
Morning, how y'all doing? My name's Shannon Bruffett. I'm the representative of the Tampa chapter of the Skateboarding Heritage Foundation. I've grown up in Tampa. I've lived here for approximately 35 years. Over 25 years of those have been spent riding the Bro Bowl. But today I come before you not as a skateboarder so much as a preservationist. I guess coming this age and stage of life, we start to look back at things that have shaped us and things we enjoy. And one of the things that's closest to my heart is skateboarding. And being a part of Tampa, I've seen how Tampa's enjoyed the Bro Bowl being here and playing such an integral role of the development of the culture. it's my understanding that y'all have a copy of my nomination in hand and have had time to review it, so I won't, reiterate all the points that are made there, and give you the entire story of the Bro Bowl. But there's a lot of issues at play here, considering where do we go next with Perry Harvey Park, trying to embrace the African American culture of the area and its history. But one of the biggest points I'd like to make is this park, and the Bro Bowl has been just as significant to our history as a city as all of those things that Mr. Suter spoke to. A lot of people haven't recognized that because skateboarding as a culture is still relatively new. Since its inception in the 60s, it's, just evolved consistently. And the reason why I made this nomination is the Bro Bowl reflects a part of that culture. It's not so much the purpose of it and, whether it's practical as a modern facility, it's more of a monument and a reflection of a period of a time gone by that there are, as we've stated, very few examples surviving throughout the nation. And I was not involved in 2006 or 2007 with the city and their plans. I was unaware of that. Had personal issues that kept me from that. But I've been doing my own due diligence and research and preparation of the Register of National Historic Places for approximately 3 or 4 years. And after it came to light with the progression and the development of Perry Harvey Senior Park, I pressed on and submitted my nomination to the State Historic Preservation Office. And, through their encouragement and other individuals, we are now at this point. Like I said, rather than reiterate a lot of the information that's already been presented to you through the nomination, I have a series of audiovisual materials from professors and colleagues and historians that support our position as to preservation, which I'd like to show now. The first up is a segment of a documentary that was made in 2008 by iSplice Creative. One of their representatives from that collaboration is here, Mr. Lance Robson. He'll be speaking to you later. And it features interviews of professional skateboarders who will share with you a little bit of the bowl's history and its story. So if we could show that now.
In 1975, Tampa Parks and Recreation employee Joel Jackson drove by a parking lot and saw kids having a skateboard competition. In those days, the skateboard craze mostly consisted of downhill rides weaving in and out of cones. Jackson thought skate park would be ideal for the kids of Perry Harvey Senior Park in downtown Tampa. From his observation of the downhill contest and photos of bull riding in California, Jackson designed the bowl himself. In 1979, a free, right-at-your-own-risk cement skate park was completed in downtown Tampa, Florida. Part downhill, part ditch, part pool.
Oh, the Bro Bowl. I'll never forget that. You're looking at, mid-'70s. And the thing I remember mainly is because we had this rash of concrete parks that started springing up, like 1976, where we had Skateboard City in Port Orange, and then Paved Wave and Cocoa was next, and then just bam, 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 all these parks started landing in Florida. I first skated the bowl probably, it would have been late 78 or 79 sometime. They built it in 78. And when they built, by the time they designed it and actually built it, the skate parks had gone from being this low surfer influence to vertically orientated, so nobody even liked it. And the thing about the Bro Bowl, when we heard that there was concrete over there, and that was always just a huge thriller for anyone in that era. And because skate parks were brand new, I mean, they had never existed in history. There were two in Tampa. There was Skate Wave and Rainbow Wave. Skate Wave went first, Rainbow Wave went second. So there wasn't a concrete park left. Pretty much skateboarding shrunk up and disappeared. So many of them literally went out of business and were torn down within 2 years, 3 years of cropping up. Only a couple of them survived. And we sort of rediscovered the bowl because we had nothing to skate now. Bro Bowl emerged victorious in the attrition rate of all those parks. It was left shining in my eyes. I thought it was cool. That's the weirdest thing about it. Of all the things I've skated, there's nothing like that has that tranny and bank and pump bumps, you know, like this ditch. It's like a ditch bowl with some bumps in it. While the Bro Bowl is not the best design place, its fun level was just so up there on the scale. We had a blast. That little area there had all those little sort of that street skating kind of effect around the outer edges of it.
But I used to go over there and do bonuses over the slide, and I skated there just as, you know, a lot too, because it was there during the, you know, early 80s, mid 80s when street skating was just starting to be called something.
Whenever the bowl was too crowded, I mean, I would go skate the hip over there. And that's one of the, I mean, I learned to skate that hip. That was before there were hips in skate parks. You know, that was before pyramids existed. We skated that hip when I was in junior high and high school.
We keep it real. Something Tampa's never seen, you know what I'm saying?
In the 90s and early 2000s, it's got more coverage than the Bro Bowl itself. The banks, yeah, the brick banks.
Big shouts out to Kenny K. Rest in peace. Alright, it comes to you like this. From the blue chair to the honeycomb hideout to sight and sound. We come to you in surround sound. It's good to hear some music again from my man, the grand, extravagant, incredible, funk, ghost.
Yeah. All right. I'm just tripping.
Well, the greatest thing about that bowl is you can take anybody of any caliber to it. Because it's got the hill on it, it's a gravity skate park. There aren't many skate parks where you can use gravity and no skill at all to go ride them. So it's got this interesting characteristic. My daughter's 13 and my son's 8, and it's their favorite place they've ever skateboarded in the world because their skill isn't that great, but they go to the top of the hill and gravity takes them down and around and they love it.
It's not super gnarly, so you can make it gnarly, but if you're like Tully or someone that just gets crazy, just tears it up. But you could bring your little kid and, you know, he could just roll down and carve around and then keep working his way up the walls.
Kids love it. They can just go down and carve or turn around and don't have to really know how to do anything, you know. You don't even have to know how to kick, turn, or anything. You just have to know how to ride.
I hope it's still there, so when my son that's 4, when he starts being able to rip, we can go there and, you know, I mean, we could all kind of cruise around.
I got a 9-year-old son, you know, Mike Jr. Basically, the only place he really liked to skate, because he ain't got a kick. He just go down and carve in.
My wife skated it about 1.5 years ago. She does some business in Tampa, and she was there, I think, it was like 1.5 years ago, and she went and skated. She pulled up, got out, and skated the Bro Bowl. Which, you know, she loves the Bro Bowl. She skated it probably half a dozen times herself.
As much time as I spent there since I was 14 years old to I'm 41 years old now. And I brought my daughter and my wife there. I've been there with all my friends over the years, and I really appreciate it.
The next series of videos or segments we'll be presenting are not quite as entertaining. They're more from the scholarly aspect and speak to the historical significance of the bowl. The next is a video who features Ian Borden, who is an architectural historian and urban commentator, currently Vice Dean for Communications at the Bartlett University College in London, and Professor of Architecture and Urban Culture. And for your information, in the packet that Mr. Fernandez gave you on my behalf, the list of presentations also has the credentials of these individuals who will be in the videos. So if we could go ahead and play Mr. Borden's statement.
Borden. I'm an architectural historian at University College London. I'm also a historian of skateboarding and of skate park design. In the 1970s, there were hundreds of concrete outdoor skate parks built all across the USA and indeed in countries across the world. And they had a unique architectural design, not only trying to replicate the kinds of waves which a surfer would find, but creating new forms, ditches, snake runs, pools, pipes, and so forth, all of which are evident at the Perry Harvey Senior Skate Park or Bro Bowl. These facilities were also important community facilities, places where people of all ages and genders and classes could come together and get to know each other. and explore different parts of their community. And they were also important precursors or predecessors for most of the skate parks that we see around us today, most of which were built from the year 2000 onwards. And they also helped heavily influence the kinds of ramps that we see at the X Games, but also the pipes that snowboarders use. So they have an extraordinary influence later in their lives. The problem with many of these skate parks from the perspective of architectural history is that most of them have now disappeared. They've either been demolished, or they've fallen into heavy disrepair, or they've been built over, and so forth. So actually there are very few, only a handful of these original skate parks from the 1970s still evident around the world. And indeed people are beginning to realise this. For example, in the UK, English Heritage, the preservation body here, is currently considering listing, historically preserving, the Ron skate park in London, which was built in 1978. So it seems to me that the Bro Bowl, the Perry Harvey Senior Skate Park, really falls into a similar category to this. It's a unique part of American architectural heritage, it's a unique bit of early skate park design, and it's also a great part of community life. I can't think of any other piece of architecture, or very few other pieces of architecture, more deserving of protection, preservation, and recognition.
Next up, we have Phil Chiocchio, who's a former instructor at the Ringling College of Art and Design, who also owned one of Florida's first concrete skate parks in the 1970s, Sensation Basin, which was located here in Gainesville. He was inducted to the Skateboard Hall of Fame in 2005, and he'll be speaking to the issue.
Hello. My name is Philip Chiocchio, and I was inducted into the Florida Skateboarding Hall of Fame in the year 2005. I'm here to speak to the Commission for 3 minutes on behalf of saving the Bro Bowl. In 3 minutes, the Bro Bowl could be bulldozed and erased as physical history, just as in 3 minutes, numerous Native American middens were erased from our culture. Tampa had the wisdom to build one of the world's first public skateboarding facilities. This was at a time when mainstream media was proclaiming skateboarders as criminals, and they were not. This was also a time when creativity and possibilities were discovered about the skateboard. The Bro Bowl became a cultural icon around the world for facing personal challenges. I suggest you stand on the Bro Bowl for 3 minutes and feel the power it holds. In 3 minutes, you will see history unfold into the modern extreme games. In 3 minutes, you will see the collaboration of generations learning together. In 3 minutes, you will see artistic movements by athletes beyond Olympic gymnastics. Florida started modern skateboarding when Floridian Frank Nasworthy added urethane wheels. This opened future doors for inline skating, scooters, verticals, snowboarding, to see concrete shapes as challenges. In 3 minutes, you will see art, math, and engineering sculptured in undulated concrete. In 3 minutes, you will see the shadows and textures that rigid skyscrapers never achieve. Like the last of the Roman aqueducts, the Bro Bowl could live for thousands of years. The Bro Bowl has taught us to see architecture in new ways, as art, social function, and color. In 3 minutes, you realize the Bro Bowl is history for the world. In 3 minutes, you have a choice to erase history or be adaptive and creative like the Commission did when building it in the 1970s. I urge you to be an inspiration to the future and preserve the Bro Bowl. Thank you.
I have to apologize for the lip sync issues. The format we used apparently presents some digital challenges, but Last up, bear with me, is a segment from Craig Snyder, who's a writer, photographer, and historian. He personally documented the evolution of modern skateboarding in Florida as a photographer for several publications such as Skate Rider, Skateboarder, Wave Rider, and National Skateboard Review in the 1970s. And in 2011, he too was inducted into the Skateboard Hall of Fame. There's some interesting materials with a background and a reflection of the skate park era and how that all played out, in addition to his statement on this upcoming video.
Hi, my name is Craig Snyder. I am a historian, writer, and photographer and book author. I am currently a curator and historian with the University Galleries and the College of Arts and Letters at Florida Atlantic University in Boca Raton. I am a co-founder and board member of the Skateboarding Heritage Foundation, an educational nonprofit that seeks to preserve skateboarding's history and culture. I am also a graduate of USF and a former Tampa resident. As a lover of all things Tampa, I am here to support the nomination of the Skateboard Bowl in Perry Harvey Senior Park, also known as the Bro Bowl, as a historical site that should be preserved and protected for current and future generations. My forthcoming book, called A Secret History of the Ollie, is a 900-page illustrated history of skateboarding and its culture that focuses on the 1970s and the skate parks of that era. Most of the settings and critical history in this book takes place here in Florida and right here in the Tampa and Clearwater region. The 1970s were a critical period of innovation, and the parks of that era were part of that innovation, pivotal to the advancement of skateboarding as a sport and culture, and where modern skateboarding was born. As fellow New York author Jocko Whalen has stated in his book, The Answer is Never, the 70s skate parks were the petri dish for the future. The first concrete skate park of the 1970s was built right here in Florida in Port Orange near Daytona. When Skateboard City opened in February 1976, it unknowingly launched the skate park era. In its wake from 76 to 78, approximately 200 of these facilities were built in the U.S. alone, with 30 of those right here in Florida. Florida was only second to California in the number of parks built. By 1982, almost every one of these revolutionary structures had disappeared. Today, only 3 concrete parks from this era remain: the Derby near Santa Cruz, California, Kona in Jacksonville, and the Bro Bowl right here in Tampa. Of these 3 parks, the Bro Bowl was the only one that remains completely undisturbed in its original form, making it the last perfect example of a 70s era skate park in the United States. As 2 of the aforementioned surviving skate parks reside in Florida, I think this underscores the critical and influential role that the state had in the creation of modern skateboarding. But I am speaking today not just as a historical expert, but as an eyewitness who experienced and photographed many of the Florida parks during the 70s. At that time, I was working as a photojournalist for a number of national skate publications, reporting on the contest and the new maneuvers that were being invented at these parks. Authors and colleagues such as Ian Borden and Michael Gelfand, Betsy Gordon of the Smithsonian, Tony Hawk, and others all concur that the Bro Bowl is of historical, cultural, and architectural importance, and that it should be preserved and protected. Full statements as submitted to the state and federal preservation authorities are also available online at brobowl.org. Besides its national, state, and regional historical significance, the Bro Bowl plays a daily active role in the service of the community here. I think the city of Tampa should be proud of that heritage and join hands with the community, the state of Florida, and the feds to protect and preserve it. Thank you.
In addition to the nomination proposal, and the photos have been provided to you by Mr. Hernandez, I hope these videos have, helped shed some light on why we think this is a historic structure, and we've made the nomination. There's a lot of different viewpoints on this, and I'm not here to say that my heart or my emotions is not interwoven with some of the other skaters present. And I do feel the purpose that perhaps a new facility be constructed, perhaps even adjacently somewhere within Perry Harvey Senior Park. And just want to make it clear that we're not in opposition to the construction of a new park. We're just here strictly for the nomination and the recognition of the historical integrity of this structure, and that it be preserved for these future generations who, should the new structure, the new park be built, if they're skating there, they can actually go there, they can ride it, they can feel it. They don't have to look at bumps buried in the sand and have their parents tell them about what it was like. They can hop on their board, sitting down, standing up, whichever way they choose, and charge it just like we have for the past 35 years. I won't take up much more of your time. At the end of this, I'd like to, if there's any questions, I'd like to welcome those. I've got, as the city has their representatives, I've got a few individuals who I would like to have speak on the behalf of the Bro Bowl and our campaign here for it to be preserved. You have a list of them here. If you would like, you could call them up, or just they could come up as needed.
You actually, I guess as part of your presentation, you've got a little bit of time left, but is this being a part of a public hearing? We'll open it up to public comment, so if they'd just like to wait until that point, I mean, we're happy to do that.
Yeah. Well, some of these are just, I guess it could be included as public commentary. I just want to make it understood, as, like I said, the city has their concerned parties, that these individuals be noted that they're associated with the preservation effort and not just mere public commentary.
Okay.
So,
thank you, sir.
Appreciate it.
I think on that note, I'd like to open up to public comment, just to give everybody an opportunity to speak. There seems to be a number of people that are present and would like to voice their opinion. I'd like to limit those comments to 3 minutes each. And with that, I'd like to open it up. So anybody who'd like to speak, please come up to the podium. And state your name and address.
How are you doing this morning? Hello, my name is Nicholas Leon. I'm a co-owner of the Bowl Bros for several years now, and a Tampa resident for over 30 years. I'm here to speak on behalf of a group of over 200 individuals that use this park on a consistent and in some cases daily basis. We're here for the preservation of the Bowl Bros at Perry Harvey Park as a Tampa historical landmark, and in order to protect the bowl as it exists today and has since 1978, so the future generations can enjoy it. The purpose of historical landmark designation is to preserve historical landmarks that reflect the elements of the surrounding community and protect what is vital to the distinctive character. The Bro Bowl is definitely a community asset that should be protected because it has unlimited value as a visible reminder of the history and heritage of the city of Tampa. Again, I am not against the development or enhancement in the area, but I do feel that there has got to be a way to get it done without demolishing a piece of history. We shouldn't just allow a historical landmark to be destroyed that is used every day to build a big field of grass. There is no reason why a new park can't still be built where the city wants to build it, since the new location is nowhere near the location of the existing bowl and would have no impact at all. The Bro Bowl definitely deserves to be preserved for its contribution to skateboarding and to the Tampa community in general. It certainly deserves more than tearing it apart and using the scraps as an honorable mention of a historical landmark that was destroyed. The Bro Bowl could never be replicated, and once it is gone forever. The Bro Bowl is one of a kind and one of the last remaining skate parks from the 1970s, and it still gets used every day. The historical value of the Bro Bowl spans generations, and there are countless people who say that they started skating the bowl back when they were a kid and that they still skate there today with their kids. The bowl is unique in that people of all ages and skill levels can have a good time. With the city of Tampa's help in preserving this landmark, I hope when my son is old enough, I can teach him to skate there. Thank you for your time and consideration in preserving and protecting the importance of Tampa history. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioner. My name is Kyle Sokol. I'm an owner for the Florida Skateboard Museum, a Florida nonprofit agency, or corporation, I should say, based out of St. Petersburg, Florida. Just wanted to talk a little bit about the preservation of the Bro Bowl and what it basically has meant to, everybody here has talked about it, how much of a history it has. There really is no argument. I have a lot of stuff down that I wanted to say, but both sides have actually said it well. This is a historic place that probably deserves to be preserved as it is, I believe. Like they said, they could move it. I hate to see it because I started skating there in 1984, growing up here, and I still, as a Florida Skate Museum, I do mobile displays and also have it displayed in St. Petersburg full time. The last one I did as a mobile display was at the skate park of Tampa. Brian Schaefer was kind enough to let me lay out all these boards for the kids to see, the old boards from the 70s and 80s. And we do groups with schools and other camps, skate camps during the summer. We take the kids to the Bro Bowl because none of them know what that is. Don't have a concept of what it was to skate back then. To this day, I still do it. I've probably skinned my elbows and knees there. I'm, basically 40 years old, and people at work, I work at MacDill Air Force Base, laugh at me because I still skateboard. They think it's kind of childish, but once it's in your blood, as everybody here knows, everybody is here to support this thing no matter what happens. Whether they tear it down and they move it, whether they keep it, it's a historical site, and it should be noted that way. And I'm here to just voice myself as a member of the community, saying it's a worthy cause. Thank you.
My name's Cleo Coney. I've been skateboarding for 41 years, and I'm probably the only person here that skated almost all those parks they showed in the video. I'm 49 now, going to be 50 next year. Love skateboarding. Been skateboarding the Bro Bowl forever. It's like home cooking. And once you move out, you can't get it. You got to go home to get it. If they get rid of the Bro Bowl, you can't go home to it. It won't be there. As far as the other parks, Brian's got a great park. I remember when he first got started. He was just a little kid. I'm really proud of this guy. But Earth and Surfing, Rolling Waves, Clearwater Skate Park, Skate Wave, Kona, Sensation Basin. I'm probably the only person that got a grind in all of them that are here right now. I love these guys. I love the Bro Bowl. It was one of the only things we could skate back in the day. Early on, he showed a map of where the road was going to go through the park. But I didn't see that when he showed the new development. I didn't see an expansion of the Orange Avenue. I don't know if anybody else saw that or not, but I didn't see that. I saw it on the park, but I didn't see it on when it went the other way. So if you could, I'd like to see that just for my own eyes. But Tito, those guys can build some great parks. Team Payne, the best people to do it. I'm just hoping that it can be a win-win. A win for the skaters, a win for the community. It's a black community. It's important to me. It was one of the places I went to skate early. I don't want them just to build something and give it names after black musicians, and that's supposed to be satisfying, because the Bro Bowl, there's black skaters here who use it every day, and they live in the area. So that's part of them too. The soul of those people are there in that soil that that park is built on, and that I skated too. If they want to get a new skate park to skate, that would be great. They're not going to miss anything, because Dunedin has one, Largo's building one, Brandon has one, Bradenton has one, and Lakeland just has the Slaminist park they just built in this area. We would like another park. The more parks, the merrier, because I want to skate every day and skate something different every day, if I can. But I just think that people don't understand that when you go down, when you ride around that, those little imperfections, those cracks, the little bumps, that's what makes a big deal to us. We like that. That's why we're riding it. It's not perfect. And so to see it go away would be bad. There's no Webb City, no more Moss Brothers. There's a lot of things around here that are gone that we had no control over. We can control the Bro Bowl. It's already there. It's been there since 1977, 78.
Thank you, Mr. Coney.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Justin Ryan. I've been skateboarding 28 years. I've lived in Ybor City 5. I just moved to Brandon, Florida. Cleo's correct. There's a lot of new skate parks being built in the area. They're all great, and they all help the modernization of skateboarding. We saw some facts earlier. There's more participants now skateboarding than there were in the 70s. So I think it's useful for the city to give that youth somewhere to grow and expand, instead of look back on the 20 years that maybe skateboarding lived here in Tampa. We have more future than that. Going to the historic aspects of things, I have a couple notes. We heard a lot about the African American history in the area, dating back to the Civil War. That stuff's important. If this skate park does not allow Ray Charles Road to go through, or the black community to enjoy their park, I'm all for moving it a few hundred feet up the street, and I think a lot of guys that came with us today are as well. And also, they talked about famous designers in skateboard history and skateboard parks. The gentleman that was here in Florida was not a famous historian. He was not somebody that, we look to as being a great builder. The park itself was probably never built to be the greatest skate park in the world, and I think you could see the older parks and the bigger parks that were built. Kona, for instance, is significantly larger and more important to skateboarding than what we see at the Bro Bowl today. And I don't want to take any more of your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lep Stewart. I'm a Floridian, a recent transplant to Tampa, but I'm also a bit of a skateboard historian. I grew up skating Kona, the other park, one of the other historic parks mentioned, since the mid-'70s. I published a skateboard magazine for about 8 years that covered Florida skateboarding. And I do agree with the historical, the history of the Bro Bowl. I started coming down here in the mid-'80s to skate the Bro Bowl. But what I'm hearing here is that, part of it was this, what Cleo mentioned, this expansion of the highway there that was going to affect this park anyway. And it sounds like the city put a lot of thought into preserving this whole area in a way that respects the history of the area, not just of the Bro Bowl, but this whole area. And they put a lot of thought into the progression of the Bro Bowl but while maintaining the history of it, into a new park. And a lot of talk was about progression. And if you watch the presentation, part of the banks that Brian talked about, they were in the presentation trying to make the point for preserving it. Those banks are no longer there. I think that part of this new park design preserves that element that is part of the history of it. There's a transition from this skateboarding was dropping in, rolling down, taking gravity, and taking you around, to all of a sudden you see video parts where these guys are riding the banks next to it, which was kind of an accident, but it was progression. We keep talking about progression. And this is the reason, our stance is this is progression while preserving the history of the bowl. This is a place that my daughters, I want to bring down here. Like I said, I'm from Jacksonville. I grew up in Kona. I've skated the bowl, the pool that Team Paint has refurbished with respect to the old pool, and they did a great job. I learned a lot of tricks in that pool, and you can still do those tricks in the same style in this newer pool. The difference is it's smoother, it's a little safer for my daughters to ride. There's not expansion joint crack problems. There's not holes where the surface has deteriorated over time. So I'm in support of preserving this park by moving it in a place where I can take my daughters and people can ride the banks and we can ride down the hill and people can ride on their butt if that's what they want to do, and everybody's happy. And the history of this area is preserved, respectfully. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'd like to encourage anybody else to come up and speak.
Hi, my name is Angela Lorenzo. I am a Tampa native, and I am a female skateboarder, and I love to skate the Bro Bowl. It is safe for your daughters. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. My name's Kyle Randall. Skating for 27 years. Been in Tampa for 20. And I really love the Bro Bowl. I've skated a lot. I skate with all these guys there, probably every single one of them. But I go there maybe twice a year because of maybe not only the parking and coming across. I can't really take my kids there as much as I used to. But it's not really a skatable park for me. I do appreciate the total history of it, but I'm just for something I could skate. I work 10 minutes away, and I'd really enjoy it with... I'd really enjoy the new park, I believe, and not just me, but for the whole community. So that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else, please come forward. forever hold your peace. Okay, I'd like to give another 5 minutes to the applicant just to give him a rebuttal and final word. And let's see, Mr. Bruffett, there he is.
Bear with me if I seem a little bit disorganized or my thoughts are here, there, and everywhere. I'm just going to try to address some of the things that have been said here today. When I started this nomination, I just want to be clear, it wasn't in opposition to anything with progression or the growth of Perry Harvey Park. It was just that I feel that nobody else spoke up for it. It would just fall the way of the scrub and many of the other historical aspects of Tampa. And obviously that's pretty clear, seen by the few supporters that have shown up here. Things that haven't been mentioned by Mr. Suter was during these public meetings in 2006, he's giving you the little handwritten notes of, you know, in the context of a new park, we just want skating there. But there were also, from what research I did, you know, over 1,000 people who came to speak for saving the Bro Bowl and keep it there, and how much love they had for it. Us as skateboarders, we're not the most formal individuals. We're not, you know, some of us are businessmen, some of us hold positions here in the community that, you know, a little more responsible than others. I don't want to generalize, but, you know, it's hard for us to come before a commission like you and speak on our opinion, whether it be for the new park or the preservation of the bowl. But there's some things that have been mentioned here. There's gray areas, as Mr. Coney spoke on, the widening of Orange Avenue. That was the main reason that the city gave for the necessity of the Bro Bowl being demolished in 2006, 2007. And it was my understanding that Ed Womble went to federal DOT and researched that fact, and there were no plans for the next 10 years within that department for that widening of Orange Avenue. So at that point, demolition was halted. Everybody keeps talking about the history of Central Avenue and the scrub and the soil and this and that, but what you have to understand is there's not a dividing line between the black culture of that area and the skateboard culture of that area. That's why this bowl is so important. It erased that line. We used to go there, have bottles thrown at us, rocks thrown at us, fist fights. I've been hit with brooms, but we kept going back. And it was not always that type of situation. We also formed relationships there that just, you know, friendships that I still talk to people and contact people I've met there 30 years ago. It's just, it's not a racial issue, and I think a lot of this is bordering on that it has to be, we preserve African American history, and that takes precedence over this decrepit skateboard bowl that people claim are unsafe and has cracks and holes in it, which, if you'd like to take a ride down there later this afternoon, it's got its little imperfections, sure. It's nearly 40 years old, it's concrete, it sits out in the Florida sun every day. But even as many of the people who were in town recently for the Hall of Fame, Skateboard Hall of Fame, commented while I was skating there with them, this thing's in remarkable shape considering its age. So just try to take all this, you know, into consideration while you're thinking about the skateboard bowl. Don't think that it's, you know, solely about skateboarding, because it's not. The people who wrote it weren't all skateboarders. A lot of them were the children from the Central Park Village. They came there. They borrowed our boards. You know, things like Boards for Bros, where now, you know, there's an organization that collects old skateboards and gives it to the underprivileged children. That was born from places like the Bro Bowl. This place has made contributions to our culture that have yet to be realized. And I know that it's less than 50 years old, and maybe it doesn't fall in the same category as the Easley building. But if it's not given the opportunity to reach that status and that age, you know, we'll reflect back on it and say, why didn't we save it? You know, why is that just a memory in Tampa? Why are pieces of it buried next to a new park? It's, you know, I've got a lot of passion in this, and personally I try to stay low-key and away from public issues and opinion. But this bowl just means a lot to me, and I've witnessed firsthand that how much it means to my community. And I go there every week, and I still skate it. Some people only go there a couple times, you know, a year. so be it. But it's still used regularly. It's still a part of our city, and hopefully, as we move on with the Encore development, the redevelopment of Perry Harvey Senior Park, it can be included rather than seen as a hindrance or a stepping stone that we have to trip over to move forward.
Thank you.
Any questions?
I think at this stage, I would like to open it up to the board for questions, and whether it be to Mr. Bruffett or anyone else who spoke or in attendance today.
Commissioners, Dennis Fernandez, Architecture Review and Historic Preservation Manager. One of the issues that arose through the discussion that I think is somewhat ancillary to your role today, but is relevant for the discussion because of some of the testimony was given, was the I-275 approach on Orange Avenue. And I did look into that issue. It was brought to my attention very early in this proposal that there was a prospective increase into the approach onto I-275. Lane Elise, with the consultant with the FDOT, is here today. She can provide a little bit more information on that. Would you like to hear from her at this time before you get into questions?
Yes, please.
Available, yes.
Good morning, Elaine Leish. I am a consultant for the Department of Transportation. I've been working on the Tampa Interstate Study since 1991. I was the project manager during the environmental impact statement that I wasn't here earlier, but I understand that the plan was shown from the environmental impact statement, that where the Orange Avenue was being widened. The department did a lot of coordination on Perry Harvey Park with the Central Park Village community at the time, with the Parks and Rec Department. The conclusion that is included in the environmental document is at that time the park was considered really to be a neighborhood park, and there were several things that were being proposed if and when the downtown interchange were to be constructed as mitigation. So there was a swath identified, and the Orange Avenue was identified as being needed. There is no, as was somebody else just stated, there is currently no funding for that downtown interchange. It is something that will be inevitable. It will eventually come. The reason it hasn't been constructed to date is because it is so expensive. So the department is currently looking at alternative options to what is actually in the environmental impact statement that might be less expensive, that would still provide improvements for the downtown interchange. So the conclusion to this is it's safest for the Parks Department as they move forward in redeveloping the park to stay out of the area that's shown as potential right-of-way take. But if and when the decision is made to keep the Bro Bowl there, the department, if they came forward and needed right-of-way there, they would be required to go through a whole separate process that would evaluate what other alternatives they could do from impacting that historic resource. And that would be a required process. And so that would take on its whole separate, and the department would be required to do that. So it's one of those things that it's out there. It is a potential for impact, but that's just something the department would have to deal with at a later date, and we don't know when that later date is. So I hope that helps.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I have just one question. She stated that there is not, I'm sorry, you said currently there isn't any funding. How many years out does the department plan their funding? Is it 5, 10, 20?
Well, unfortunately, it's done through the Metropolitan Planning Organization. They have a long-range plan that's a 20-year plan. They have a 10-year plan, a 5-year plan. Unfortunately, it doesn't always develop that way. Lots of times, there may be something that's not even in the 20-year work and the 20-year long-range plan that all of a sudden money becomes available and they plop it in and bring it in. But with that said, they would have to go back through a reevaluation, even if they were to build the exact thing that is in the environmental impact statement, which they don't have the money to do that. But they would have to go back through a reevaluation, then they'd actually have to do the design, then they would have to acquire property and construct it. So, probably even if they started tomorrow, it would probably be 10 years out. So, I mean, and they don't have an approved concept yet right now that they can afford. So it's, you know, it's one of those things where we just don't know, unfortunately. And that's why I say, if the bowl ends up being there, the department will have to go through their whole separate, you know, we did the whole Section 106 process and the 4F, which is required by the department. So we just go through our process that we would be required to look at, can we avoid the historic resource? If not, how do we minimize the impact to it? And we'd have to work through that with the federal highway.
Thank you.
Now would be the appropriate time for any questions you might have, the testimony that was presented.
I have a question for Tito. If you can come up.
Hello.
During the different presentations, the word safety came up, and from different perspectives. I grew up without a helmet or pads, so I have my share of bruises and falling off my bicycle. But nowadays, safety is a very big issue. My 3-year-old grandson wears a helmet when he rides his tricycle. So in your analysis of the existing skate park, are there any major safety issues that need to be corrected in order for it to continue to be used?
Well, you know, on our end, we can get pretty technical with that. Nowadays, there's specifications for. I mean, if we go by the specifications that are out there for skate parks, it's really supposed to have smooth transitions and such. However, this obviously wasn't built with smooth transitions. I mean, you can get very picky. That's actually part of what people love about it, is the imperfections of it. In regards to, so you know, you can get two sides of the fence with that. But if you stand by, you know, modern skate parks, modern skate park would never be built like that. But, you know, that is part of what people love about the Bro Bowl. However, you know, it does become a little bit, you know, that in itself could be one of the aspects that you could be on both sides of the fence. In regards to cracks, well, you know, the cracks are expected. You know, there's a couple green areas that were filled. There's expansion joints. It's not a cold joint, which is, you know, it's something that could heave in the future. Has it? No. It's been, I think they covered that, Brad, you guys covered that probably in the late 90s, the grass areas. They also added a deck around the perimeter that's also really not to skate park specs. Again, regular sidewalk construction and whatnot. So, you know, when you look back at the statistics, 50% of skateboard injuries occur on uneven grounds. This park does have some areas like that. You know, a lot of people love that. You know, so as a skater, I grew up skating, you know, not great ramps. It built me a stronger person. However, as skateboarding's grown and evolved to so much more access and is so much more accepted, less of a fringe, you know, kind of outcast type activity, there's more people having access. So it is, from our skate park perspective, a safer route to provide a safer facility without the concern of those cracks, and in a way sort of eliminating the injuries that do happen as a result of those uneven cracks that are out there. In the past, one of my biggest concerns when I visited the bowl, and I believe this has already been fixed, but it took a while, was, you know, the drain was sticking out like, you know, 2 inches, and there was like a big gap like that, and it was like a giant cheese grater. You know, it was really sketchy. And, you know, did that get fixed? Yes. Is it perfect? No. You know, that's what happens when you have, you know, brittle concrete that at the time was not to the specs of concrete today. Is the bowl currently in a, you know, in doing really well for its age? Absolutely. But it's, you know, not perfect.
I guess maybe I've got two questions. One for you, Tito.
Yes, sir.
Do you think that the park can get by with just minimal repairs to the cracks and general maintenance, or at some point in time is the surface going to have to be, I mean, completely redone?
I would right off the bat say it would have to be, as we call it, poured on top. I mean, in all honesty, it's a matter of time as, you know, the cracks, you know, it just deteriorates. And so if we're talking about keeping something indefinitely, you know, historically, it's eventually just going to, you know, as time goes, it will become unusable. You know, so, you know, again, going back to the original intent, you know, we got to look at what, you know, like a stadium. You know, you have, you know, famous stadiums, but once capacity reaches the limit, that's the first thing that gets expanded on. You know, with skateboarding, there's a lot of people that like the old stadiums, and there's people that want big, fancy stadiums with a lot of capacity so people can come. So we're, you know, that's sort of what you're seeing here. A lot of people are going for progression, stuff that's up to modern specs, a little bit more user-friendly to give access to what most of us worked hard for. You know, we were outcasts when we were skateboarding. We weren't the popular kids. And nowadays, the tables have been turned, and we don't want to sit there and a lot of the skate community wants to provide a safe facility, especially in the municipal angle. You know, downtown Tampa has changed drastically, especially from those days in the 80s when we used to go skate that bowl. And so I think access, being, you know, adapting some, you know, good historically based urban, you know, activities that don't require a coach, you know, accessing, you know, street skating. That brick bank that's no longer there, that's 80% of the skateboard population. Right now, they don't really have anything to ride. So we're trying to, you know, mitigate it by providing for all.
Thank you.
I have one question for him. What elements of the Bro Bowl are incorporated into the new skate park design?
Well, what we're doing is a modern take of what you call a snake run. You know, with the challenges that we have in our flat state, you know, it was really tough to kind of gain, you know, the downhill elements and qualities that you find. But through our design work, we end up managing to not only get a downhill snake run, but also to update it to kind of champion more of the, you know, modern skater and the future skaters. But it's still as like consistent with our first criteria when we walked into this project. It has to be lunch, break, work, boot ready. You know, if you haven't skated in 20 years, you can still jump on a board on your butt or on a bike, go down, have fun, have a blast. Our biggest struggle and I think our biggest feat was to achieve that, which is in the regards to the operations and actually getting the same vibe except a little bit more, you know, updated, you know, in regards to just its design. But it's still considered a snake run.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Cheetah?
Actually, I do.
Microphone.
What about the whole location of the current versus where it's going to be proposed? Is there like a historical quality about like where the existing location of the park is versus where they're going to relocate it, I guess, up near the interstate embankment?
Well, you know, part of when you look at the general park design and how, for example, you know, just about anyone that gets faced with that history of this park that they've been skating at but just were not aware of, and all the information and facts that came into, you know, working it out, you know, the potential, whether it happens in 5 years or 20 years, is still going to happen, you know, with the expansions. A lot of people called, you know, hey, that's not accurate. That wasn't our job. Our job was to work with the information we have. So, you know, that in regards to the general master plan, and then the future connection of having the skate park in the north, where it just laid out on a master plan base, just better. It's a chance to do it, in our understanding, better, next to the potential future middle school, access to kids, you know, and getting those active areas towards the north. It just made sense. The mature trees to preserve some of the shade. Shade is so important when, you know, the big grade elevations right next to the road are going to, you know, make it really difficult to, you know, kind of do anything around it. You know, you have the edge of the bowl, but with the grade, you also have like 40 feet outside of it just to gain to that elevation. So it you know, it was just no question that, you know, although it's a consequence that it happens to be there, and a lot of people are attached to it. But the better design, the better access to the future, the unborn skater that's yet to start it, that's going to experience it, the inclusion of the history, and the overall theme of the history of the entire park is being, in our opinion, being preserved, and also providing a better incentive for our youth. So location-wise, it just happens to be there. I mean, but right now that's the center of the park.
Well, because I've noticed, I'm not a skateboarder, but I've driven that street a bazillion times, and it seems to be very active all the time. And I was just wondering if they move it up, kind of hidden, up on the north end, that activity wouldn't be there. I was just wondering if, like, there's part of the historical quality that so many people find important to this is not only its 1970s design, but the actual location of it with the surrounding, I mean, I'm
Well, it
still
sounds
trying
like, from the location next to the school, I mean, that would be one of the mitigating factors, is that you would have that population base there.
I'd like to just step in on the location. The location is honestly in a safer spot because it's not right on Orange as it is now. It's actually not tucked away. When you're standing on the Bro Bowl, whether it be the south end or the north end, you can clearly see where the location is going to be because the whole park only goes from Cass to the interstate, which is less than half of a mile, if not a quarter mile. So it's separated into 4 disciplines. And that back corner is just going to provide a nice little element for barbecues and families where, not to say the other park won't with the design because it's very functional throughout. It's not far away, it's not going to be tucked away, and as skateboarders, whether you're just beginning, or bikers as you're just beginning, or a longboarder, or even just a place to enjoy a nice atmosphere with activity, behind you, it's going to be perfect. So it's not going to be left behind because people won't have the visibility to it. It's going to be the best location for the move, especially that we're preserving the same ability and the same flow of what we're actually going to take away. So the visibility and the use, I guarantee it will be utilized and noticed and available and more obtainable for everybody with not only the community but everybody from around the world.
Thanks.
Did that answer your question of the location?
Actually, I think I'd like to ask a couple questions of the presenter at an appropriate time. I'm still trying to get what about this is so historical? And I'm thinking perhaps location, perhaps the people who've actually participated, used it in the past, and then maybe the actual design of it, kind of what you were talking about, how the new one keeps versus disrupts that early 70s design. And I'm still just trying to figure that all out.
Mr. Chairman, maybe it would help if at this point I help the Commission focus on exactly what the state and eventually the federal government is looking from the Commission. As Mr. Fernandez has stated, because we are certified local government under the relevant U.S. code sections that apply to the designation process, the application is forwarded down to the state, and then it's forwarded to the Certified Local Government Commission, which is to you all. And what the state is looking for is, well, what that does is allows the commission to hold a public hearing, and if we so choose, then to provide a report up to the state. And what they are looking for in that report is very limited. They are looking for a report as to whether or not the property that's in question here meets the eligibility criteria. And that really should be the scope of all of your discussion, should be talking about whether or not it meets A through D, and because it's less than 50 years, it meets the other criteria considerations A through G that were provided in your backup.
Well, that's true. Like, one of the things is exceptional importance is what we have to make a finding on. And an exceptional importance, if you're more than 50 years old, that's easy. If you're newer than 50 years old, it's got to be exceptional. And so that's why I was kind of toying around with, like, location, I guess participants. Is the location today versus the new one, is that exceptional? I mean, and then participants, the design from the 70s to revised today, it's apparently there's only 3 left, right? Which kind of makes it exceptional, but is it, and I don't know.
Well, those are exactly the questions. This was the law part of it, and those are the facts that you all need to apply to these criteria.
Well, I think part of that, the National Register doesn't define what's exceptional. That's right. And it's done, for us to be able to have this discussion, and there's some objectivity, and it's somewhat arbitrary in nature. But one of the guidance is there an extraordinary impact of political or social events? So if we specifically, kind of look at what the application says and the criteria set forth, by the Register, is it, associated with events that have a significant contribution? So it's not necessarily location, it's specific events. The distinctive characteristics, so the construction, the engineering, so on and so forth. And of course, this is less than 50 years. And 50 years they've deemed is important, and that's somewhat arbitrary too, and they outline that. But it's for us to be able to have a historical perspective, and is 35 years enough for us to be able to look back and reflect on and say, okay, this is something that is culturally significant, that meets that benchmark that I think we decide today, or at least have some guidance on it being, exceptionally important. So I think, I don't know that location, and it may, and I'm not trying to say anything disparaging, but
that goes to the integrity of the resource. I mean,
and that as well. And actually, that's a good transition. And Dennis, if it is repoured, what does that do to the historical integrity of the property?
The Dennis Fernandez, Architects Review and Historic Preservation Manager. The issue with exceptional importance, as it derives from the integrity of the resource, is relevant for your discussion. I believe that part of the nomination deals with criterion G in the applicant having to demonstrate exceptional importance. So through your evaluation of the different criterion A, C, and G, it would be relevant to incorporate some of the discussions to the integrity of the site, those attributes that have been removed or added to the site over time. As far as addressing your questions as to criterion G and how the property meets criterion G, that would be better handled by Mr. Bruffett, since he actually developed the nomination. In my conversations with the state, the factor of criterion G, the exceptional important factor which they have identified, is the fact that the Broble has a high degree of integrity of design and is representative of those 1970s era golden age of skateboarding parks, most of which, all of but 3, have been lost to demolition. And that, in the state's opinion, is the qualifier for exceptional importance. Whether the National Register Review Board agrees with that or not is still to be determined, just as if this particular entity agrees with that. But that is the information that's been presented for consideration at this time.
Dennis, do we have to make a decision today, or could we table and give the commission time to maybe have a workshop or maybe visit the site and get a better handle on the facts associated with this proposal?
The hearing before the National Register Review Board is scheduled for July the 25th. As a certified local government, we have 60 days to comment. We were notified on May the 25th. This was the available hearing. If it's the desire of the board to continue it for further information, then you can choose another hearing date. That would really be up to the pleasure of the board. But we do need to have comment in advance of July 25th. They have to receive it by that particular date.
I think it probably, Mr. Son? I'm sorry. Thought you had something to add. One of the things we've talked about, Mr. Bruffett talked about, is just the social importance. And I think as I read through the petition, one of the things that really stood out at me and was mentioned in the room is I guess blending of cultures. I mean, here we are, building a skate park in '78, which predominantly and at the time was mostly a Caucasian sport in the projects, which was mostly African American, and this kind of cultural integration coming together. I'd like to hear from Mr. Hearns, if possible, since he was the Director of Community Affairs, and what the African Americans community's opinion is on that specific comment.
Hello again, Fred Hearns. One of the things that I did not mention, and I'm glad that you asked the question, we very carefully considered the makeup of that advisory committee. Brad Suter spent quite a bit of time meeting with the skateboard community. I spent quite a bit of time meeting with the community tied to the history of the area, again, that goes way back to the 1860s. Two of the members of that committee were, and I gave you a little bit of background on who Perry Harvey Sr. was. His daughter and his granddaughter were very active on that committee. In fact, his granddaughter was the vice chair. We also had descendants of many of the business owners on Central Avenue. Moses White, who many people called the mayor of Central Avenue for many years. His daughter was very active on that committee. And so we tried to get people who had deep roots in the community. And overwhelmingly, and of course they reached out to other people and got input during the course of those 12 months. And there were, I think, 2 or 3 big community meetings that Brad was also involved in, and other folk from the city. And I think overwhelmingly the people that I talked to and the people who spoke before our committee and some members of the community also came to those meetings, including the brother of the young man who was shot and killed in 1967. That was the beginning of the civil disturbances that resulted in several buildings on Central Avenue being burned down. Also at that time, we had integration taking place in the city, so people were not restricted to just going to those businesses. African Americans were able for the first time to go to restaurants on Dale Mabry, Hillsborough, and other places. And then with the expansion of the interstate, all this happened within just a few years. But again, to get back to your question, I think the community is very supportive of the plan that has been developed with preserving the skateboard, because originally a lot of the people I talked to said, forget the skateboard. That's what a lot of people said when we started the process. By the end of the 12 months, however, everybody was pretty much on the same page. We want not only preserve skateboarding in Perry Harvey Park, but put a significant amount of money into it. The African American community that I talked to was all in favor of that, and they're still in favor of that. And that's pretty much my response to I think, your question. Martin Chambers was a young man who was killed, and that sparked a whole lot of discussion in the area. And again, that's when the young people said, we want a park in this area. We don't have a park. That's how we got Perry Harvey Park. That's how it began.
Thank you. Ms. Barnes, you have a question?
Yes, I have one question for you. The new design shows, I believe, a theater of some sort, outdoor theater of some sort in the location of the skate bowl. And my question for you is, does that theater, reconstructing it, is it a reconstruction of something that used to be there from those photographs that were shown in the initial part of the presentation? I just don't remember what was in the exact location. So is the theater significant to the history of the property, or were there events that were held in the location of the Bro Bowl previous to its construction that have historical significance?
Absolutely. For many years on the corner of what then would have been Central Avenue and Harrison Street, which is very close to where the Bro Bowl is, and where for many years we had the Lincoln Theater. It was the only theater available to African Americans for many years. Prior to that, it was the Central Theater, also on Central Avenue. So the outdoor theater, while it's not an indoor theater like the Lincoln was, will serve that purpose of, again, preserving some of that history, which was for many years, again, the only theater available to African Americans up until the 1960s here in Tampa.
And as follow-up to that, will would preservation of the Bro Bowl interfere with the location of like those theaters that you mentioned in your I mean, we haven't really seen an overlay plan, so that's why I'm asking, and it might be a question that, hasn't been looked into before, but.
It would terribly disrupt the plans that have been made, that everyone pretty much agreed would be in the best interest of everybody. The current location is right in the middle of where the amphitheater audience would be, so to speak, as well as the history walk, and there's some other things that are planned. We'd have to start over from the beginning, and it's just, I'm hoping that that won't happen, that we'll find out that it is in the best interest of the city to move the project north of Scott Street, expand it 3 times the size of the current skate bowl, and that's what I think the African American community would be most supportive of.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Ernst. Any other questions?
I have a question for Dennis. It's my understanding that just because something is on the National Register doesn't mean it's necessarily going to be preserved. So whether or not we vote to say that it fits the criteria for the National Register, that doesn't really have anything to do with whether or not it's going to be preserved in the future plans of this park.
North of Waste.
Dennis Fernandez, Historic Preservation Manager. I would say yes and no on that. And let me start with the yes. The yes is that the National Register of Historic Places does not in itself entail a element of protection like a local designation does. And this is a form of recognition for the history of a particular area, and there are literally thousands of these in the city of Tampa with the districts, and we do have properties routinely that are listed on the National Register that are demolished within districts. The requirement becomes one of heightened documentation. There would also be some requirements set forth through federal regulations that require a heightened sensitivity to properties that are listed or eligible, which has already been determined to be eligible, when federal dollars are expended on areas where impacts could be adversely impacted.
Right.
The other side of that is that by moving forward with a National Register listing, you as a board are essentially endorsing the historic importance of a property. With that, when a demolition request is received through our office, when it is listed on the National Register, it has a heightened level of review that may result in it coming back to this board for consideration of the demolition and what that means to the significance of the resource. So it is not something to be dismissed as being irrelevant. It definitely has a relevancy, and throughout the early discussions of this proposal, that's why I felt comfortable with bringing the Parks Department and the interested parties into the conversation to have a discussion, because this is really the most significant discussion on the legitimacy of this designation that's going to occur throughout the process at a local level. The state has reviewed it. On the surface, they feel that it meets the eligibility requirements. That has to go to a board. Still, that has to be consented on by the National Register of Historic Places. The state is far removed from our local environment here. They're much more out of contact with the redevelopment plans that have been going underway for 15 years or so. One thing I think that needs to be brought, well, actually 2 things I'd like to say. One is that the historic resources in the area were never ignored by all the agencies that were involved in the redevelopment. They acted in accordance with the information that they had at that particular time in the mid-90s with the historic resources inventories that were provided that identified certain resources in the area, many of which we have designated locally as landmarks to be historically sensitive and in need of preservation. and by far those are acknowledged and addressed in the redevelopment, including the St. James Church, which is a local landmark, which is planned to be an African American museum. So, at the time, the information that was available, the city, the Tampa Housing Authority, the community acted with all those interests in mind. At that particular time, the skate bowl was in its infancy and was not identified as being even nearly eligible for recognition. With this recent revelation, all occurring in May, essentially, that was brought to the city's attention, puts it in a more of a defensive position with now having to go and somewhat design after the fact, or consider redesigning after the fact. So it's something I think that's relevant to our discussion here, because the state is not aware of all that time and money invested in it. The other thing to point out is that the nomination proposed by Mr. Bruffett isn't by any means baseless. It's already gone through an initial review by the state and has shown that it does meet the basic criteria in their staff opinion to be considered. So, there's two very relevant points that are being discussed today. Really, the role of this board to kind of bring it back in is to look at the nomination this before you and to make a decision that really represents the community as a whole on how you're looking at this particular resource and the future development of this area, its total history, not just its history locked into the Bro Bowl, but its total history going back into the late 1800s, and how the community as a whole perceives this particular area and thinks it is best represented for redevelopment in the future if that were to happen. As a consideration, that's not your charge to determine if the redevelopment occurs or not, but just as a factor of your consideration in weighing the evidence.
Well, and one of those factors, and Dennis, I don't know if you can answer this for me, or maybe it's more appropriate for Mr. Suter from the Parks Department. I thought someone had mentioned a grant that was been awarded for redesign of the park.
Yes.
What's the time frame in which that has to be utilized, and if this is designated, or at least recommended to be placed on the list? I think we've heard a little bit about that appellate process, and does it put the grant at risk?
The grant that was mentioned is the Choice Neighborhoods grant that was actually granted to the Housing Authority. I believe the number was $35 million, of which they were going to contribute $3.5 million to the park for improvements. That's what triggered the environmental assessment and therefore the examination by the state. There are other grants that we were going to apply for. We've already been in touch with the Tony Hawk Foundation for a mini grant to help with the cost of the skate park construction, the new skate park construction. So those are the two relevant grants that we could speak to right now.
Okay. Mr. Suter, while you're up there, there's a lot of conversation about widening Orange at some point in time, which may or may not ever happen. But my recollection of the rendering of the park is that space bordering along Orange is now going to be green space. So if you did need to expand Orange, that's not necessarily cutting into any improvements on the site besides landscaping. Is that accurate? Or
it does cut into some. We have a 3/4 of a mile loop trail around the park. It's one of the elements that the community wanted to have incorporated into the park. Currently, right now, we have that sidewalk loop right on that borderline, right on that right-of-way line, but that can be moved over a couple feet to keep that integrity, and that 3/4 of a mile won't change at all. Other than that, the only thing that's really going to be affected are the trees that buffer essentially the park from Orange Avenue. That's why FDOT has proposed a sound wall go up. Going to wipe out a lot of trees, but at least the park users won't hear the traffic so much. But it will be kind of well into the park at that point. It does not affect the location of the new skate park as designed. The alignment goes up, and we've designed the skate park outside of that right-of-way take. And I just want to say that it was commented by Mr. Buffett that was the only driving reason of why we decided to move the skate park up to the north. But that is not the case. That was another reason why we decided to move the skate park to the north. Now, that cultural history we were talking about and the efforts of the Housing Authority to base this largest redevelopment effort almost in the nation, and only one of maybe 2 cities that received this Choice Neighborhoods grant is based on that cultural history. And we really, from the past 7 years, a lot of professionals and a lot of entities in the community and a lot of outside groups have worked together to try to really make this blend for this to be a success, not only for the community, but all the park users and interests at heart. So with that said, you know, how they intersect right at the heart of the park is really where the statue of Perry Harvey is going to be, Leaders Row is going to be, and the musical amphitheater. Well, it's not really an amphitheater. As shown, it's going to be more of a stage and a viewing area, because we want that multi-purpose for jazz events or music festivals and art festivals. And if it's an amphitheater, it kind of tends to take away from that special event possibility, just as a technical detail. So, you know, with that said, we've been working hard for 7 years, and we're just here trying to sit there and have this dream come true. We're looking forward to moving forward with it. Funding's in place, which is rare.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Suter while he's on? Thank you, Mr. Suter. Any other questions for anybody who's provided testimony?
Yeah, I'd like to talk to the applicant, ask him a couple of questions. I was wondering also, can we, this criteria G, exceptional importance, my notes are a mess. Can we get that put up on the board? So what I'd like to ask you is, there's 4 or 5 criteria, and I need to get a handle on how this meets it, because you don't have the older than 50 years old to hang your hat on, and how this is different from anything else. Right? Okay. Thank you. Here, it's down here at the bottom, right? G.
On to the next page.
Yeah. Extraordinary importance of an event or to an entire category of resources so fragile that survivors of any age are unusual. I guess, is this a true statement? There's only 3 of them like this in the country.
Yes,
right?
sir. Derby Park, which we spoke of in Santa Cruz, California, was constructed in 1976, and in 2012, due to surface issues which were far worse than the Bro Bowl, which we're speaking about today, it was resurfaced, and repairs were not only made in kind, it was, like I say, entirely resurfaced. The other park, Kona, which is privately owned, I believe was constructed 77, somewhere around there. I'm not sure on the date. I don't have it in front of me. And then the Bro Bowl, which was constructed in 78 as well. But what makes the Bro Bowl exceptional is, unlike Derby, it only has repairs in kind. There's been no major reconstruction performed on it other than the addition of the sidewalk and the concrete area added to the section between the snake run and the sidewalk. And what makes it different from Kona is it is publicly owned. It's in a municipal park. So basically, it's the last of its kind because it's in its original form and it's a municipal park. I mean, it's rare enough that it's amongst 3, but in those respects, it is unique. And that's one of the criteria that we've addressed here.
But a lot of your fellow skateboarders, I think I get the feeling out there, are comfortable in throwing that away, perhaps with a new park that incorporates some of those elements, but I guess it's safer, bigger, allows for more opportunities.
The best way to address that is to perhaps view the petition that I submitted to the council, which contains nearly 1,900 signatures, many of them local, some throughout the world. So don't let this group be representative of what is seen as the consensus of the skateboard community. This is just a local campaign for support of the new park, which I say I'm not opposed to. But just to remind the council while we're here, it's not to discuss which direction we're going to take for Perry Harvey Senior Park. It is whether the Bro Bowl is historically significant enough to be considered underneath the National Register of Historic Places.
Exceptionally important, yes.
And Mr. Manier?
Yes, sir.
In rebuttal to Mr. Suter's statement of how these funds came about and that they're available and the design of the park and all those topics he's involved in his latest address, one of the how do I put it? One of the stipulations under Section 106 of the National Preservation Act of 1966 is any redevelopment, such as Perry Harvey Senior Park, that involves federal grant money has to take into consideration all impacts to historical and environmental structures or issues contained within said development. And that is basically the purpose of the application to the National Register. Because without this recognition, I don't believe that it would be addressed with the caliber that it is today. And I don't think it would be taken serious that the Bro Bowl has the history that it does. And further rebuttal to Mr. Hearns, I don't mean to be all over the place, I'm just trying to touch on these things I've been listening to while I'm sitting back there. And Mr. Hearns spoke to the history of Central Avenue and, you know, that area up to the late 60s, but I've never sat on the curb with Mr. Hearns at the Skate Bowl. But I have sat with several other individuals of the African American community, and I do know what it means to them. And although they're not here today to voice their opinions, I can speak from firsthand experience over nearly 3 decades that skateboard bowl is just as important as the theater, the stores, and everything else that took a part or played a part in the history of the Central Avenue area. And that's one of the reasons why, you know, we're seeking this designation.
Well, yeah, just as you're absolutely right. It's always seems to be active, and replacing it with an amphitheater that's used whenever, I mean, that does intrigue me. But I'm just trying to get my handle around it on why this particular thing at this particular location with this particular concrete and this particular style is exceptionally important and can't be replaced just a little bit up the road. And that's why I keep on going back to location. I'm at that light every day, and that park is active every day. And it's a nice mix of kids, all races. And so it's very intriguing. But I'm just wondering if the same thing can't just be done right up the road.
Well, to speak to that, sir, you seem to be concerned with the location. And it's part of, you know, criteria A is, you know, that's associated with individuals who made a significant contribution to our past. And those individuals aren't Ray Charles. They're not Ella Fitzgerald. They're the local average kids that skated there over the past, you know, 35 years. And, you know, the relationships and how it, just like the Woolworth's lunch counter downtown, it served as a means of integration between diverse groups. We were forced to interact, and that is part of the reason why this bowl and its location are so important. If it were put out in Brandon, you know, we wouldn't be talking about culture. We'd just be talking about, you know, the design of it, which also plays a significant role in its contributions. But I think the main factor, and one of my biggest passions about it, is the relationships, how it socially just became this tool for different people from different parts of the city, all walks of life, to come together and enjoy it through no matter what sport they enjoy. Mostly skateboarding, but also bicycles. You know, I've seen everything at the Pro Bowl. Used to, before Central Park Village was raised, you go down there day after Christmas, and there's not too many things you wouldn't see rolling down that bowl. And that's what makes it so great. It's not designed, it was designed to be a skate park, but its use reaches far beyond that. And it's just something that anybody can enjoy at any time. You don't have to have a skill level to go there. And, you know, that's what made it so great to these kids from Central Village, you know, Central Park Village, is they could just come over at any time and just go down the hill and have fun, you know. Don't be so concerned with a perfect skateboard facility that you miss out on the fun factor, because I've seen kids from 3 years old to old guys like myself there, pretty much every week. And I don't think that's ever going to change. And I think, that adds, that's a resource that we could, embrace as a city, rather than trying to progress or improve. I mean, I'm not saying that there's not a need for a new park in the metropolitan Tampa area, especially downtown. I think there is, because I skateboarded downtown in, the 80s and the 90s, and we pretty much got rode out on a rail and faced with criminal charges, and I was always told to go to the Bro Bowl to get out of downtown. So I think there is a need for a street-style park. I'm totally in support of that. But first and foremost, and our reason for being here, is that the Bro Bowl receive its proper recognition as a historic structure and the role that it played in the shaping of our city.
I think at this stage, if everyone's okay with it, I'd like to go ahead and close the public hearing session, and let's have a debate amongst the board. See if we can come to some consensus. Everybody okay with that? I think one of the, in my mind, is I'm trying to reconcile all the different points. Is the challenge that we have here is that our forefathers had complete disregard for any history in the African American community that was there. So it's been built upon, and now there is, I think, certainly from the testimony provided, there is history with the skateboard community. There's certainly the novelty of it being with only 3 left. Obviously, there's emotional significance. You could hear from the testimony provided today, as well as some of the the documentary and video evidence. Nostalgia, but does it qualify? And again, it kind of comes back to our tools, taking the emotion out from a technical standpoint. Does it qualify under that exceptional importance guideline, because it is less than 50 years old? And the other thing that I struggle with is that if it does need to be repoured, this thing was not built. I've stood on the Bro Bowl for 3 minutes and looked at it, and it was not. It's 4-inch concrete, and it was not reinforced or built with the quality for it to last multi-generations, in my opinion. I'm not an engineer, but so then it does need to be repoured at some point. And what does that do to the integrity of it? And it sounds like there's been a substantial 20 years worth of planning that has gone into this, and it started at a time when the Bro Bowl didn't have that historical significance, and now it's gone beyond that point where we can have this argument. But is it truly historically significant? And there seems to be an awful lot of mitigation and community dialogue that has gone into finding a solution that is sensitive to both the history of the African American Central Business District, the community, as well as the skateboard community that has used it for the past 35 years, as well as a solution for them to pay tribute to it and expand upon the usage of it with a new plan.
I'd like to make a little footnote to your concern about the nature of the concrete of the bowl in and itself. I just wish to remind members of the board that we have a great number of districts, particularly buildings that we've designated as historic properties here in the city of Tampa. And like all structures, they all require some measure of maintenance, some sort of reconstruction at some point in time in their lives. We should expect no difference from structures such as this Pro Roll that we're discussing here. So I really don't believe that the matter of what is its current condition particularly germane matter to this discussion. I think what's really much more important is its presence within this community and what it means to this community, whether it has the requirements for its designation as a historic place or a historic structure. I think that's really the key to what we're contending with at this point in time. This, whether it is designated or not, the structure will always need to be maintained, will always need to be repaired, and may in time actually have portions replaced, and hopefully in like kind. But that's a decision to be made at that point in time. What we're dealing with right now is this significant or not?
Do we feel it met the? To me, in my mind, and to your point, Mr. Sutton, it's that cultural component and the integration of the two different communities and ethnic backgrounds. To me, that's what potentially could define it as culturally significant. I don't know. I mean, we've heard. We've heard some various viewpoints, and I don't know that we've heard that it has. Maybe you feel differently.
I think in the information that we've been presented today, we've looked at a lot of other structures, and based on the time period that they were built, we have deemed them as historical. This is one of the first in a while that has more of a social aspect to it, and to me that is the significance of it, is the social aspect of the Brove Bowl itself. And the one thing I was struggling with is it going to impact the recreation of the historical or the social history of the African American community, and will it conflict? And I think on a timing standpoint it's inconvenient with the level of planning that's gone into this park. But that's not our role today to decide convenience on the planning of the park. It's more, is there a historical significance? And to me, that's the social and cultural side. And tearing it down and rebuilding a skate park close by, does it preserve that? And to me, that's the question.
And quite frankly, I think one of the reasons we're struggling with this is less than 3% of properties that are submitted as being designated under C&G are approved. So this is very rare. This is hard for me because there's certainly, there's a lot of emotion. There's a lot of, I think there's a lot of history here.
And we aren't deciding if it receives that. We're just presenting our recommendation.
And again, so our job here is to determine whether or not we recommend to the state if it's satisfied or does not satisfy that criteria to be listed on the National Historic Register of Historic Places. That's the scope of our responsibility here today.
I think one of the big problems we have with this proposition before us is the nature of its history to begin with. Today, I think we're all very, very much conflicted and confronted with the fact that history is not a static item. It's very dynamic, it's very living, and it's constantly changing. And that is precisely what we are experiencing here on this site. Originally home of the African American community here in Tampa, throughout its tumultuous history, as part of this tumultuous history, giving birth to this park here, and in the building of this park, creating something really quite special that really expanded beyond the scope of this community and the immediate African community here, and really encompasses really all the races, all the people, all the sexes, all the ages here in Tampa. This is really quite unique.
Well said. So, I guess at this stage, someone like to make a motion? Either you feel that either it satisfies or it does not satisfy the criteria. As chairman, I'm unable to do it. So I guess I'm not really certain.
As holder of the architecture chair and vice chair of this committee, I believe that the proposal for historic preservation designation for the Pro Bowl meets the relevant criteria as listed in its application. I do not have that immediately in front of me. Here we have as a property associated with events that have made significant contribution to broad patterns within our history and community. Under item C, property embodies the distinctive characteristics of a type, period, or method of construction representing the work of a master or processes of high artistic value, or represents a significant and distinguishable entity whose components lack individual distinction. being a skate bowl is quite unique in its own respect. And of particular note under the exceptionalism is item G, being less than 50 years of age or having achieved significance within that past 50 years of age. I cite the fact that it is being its last of its kind, being significant in that matter.
So
I move that we accept this application for and recommendation to the city and to the state for inclusion as a historic property.
Does anybody second? I mean, basically, it's that it does satisfy the criteria to be listed. That's our recommendation.
I'll second his motion.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Okay. The motion passes then. It's the opinion of this board that we recommended to the state that it does satisfy the criteria to be listed as amongst the National Historic Register of Historic Places.
Just for clarity, could I have a hand showing of the yeas, please? And the nays?
And as chairman, am I allowed to?
Very good, thank you.
All right, next item on the agenda is the Fort Homer and Hesterly National Guard Armory.